Hello. Today we're looking at essential questions under the literature text section. We're looking at essential question number 4, what is literary text really about? As well as essential question number 5, how does interaction with text provoke thinking and response? And then number 6, how does what readers read influence how they should read it? As we're looking at these essential questions, we are getting into a new reading today. We're going to be reading a story found on page 18 of your collections textbook. And on page 18, the story is called Big Things Come in Small Packages. It is what we call from a closed reader, which is sort of a workbook that it gives you specific questions to answer, and we're going to complete it all online as best we can. Within this piece, it is a narrative piece written by an author, so it does have a plot, character, setting, and all of that. And we're going to look at the following learning targets. Cite several pieces of text evidence, make inferences drawn from the text, analyze how particular elements of a story interact, and analyze how the setting shapes the characters or plot. So I do want to go through those learning targets with you today as you start reading. So the first thing we're going to talk about is learning target number 1. Cite several pieces of text evidence in the form of facts, definitions, and concrete details to support the claims made in your analysis. This isn't the first time you've had to do this in here, but it's the first time I'm going to break down the question or the target for you. What this means is to quote from the written work in the form of facts and details to support your claim. A claim is an opinion that you've created that can be supported with facts or details from the story in your analysis. Analysis meaning your examination of the text. Now, one thing I do want to keep in mind, especially based on the Rogue Wave quiz, is I want you to know that I want you to make sure that when you have evidence, you need to make sure you put any evidence in quotation marks in your writing. Not because it's dialogue, you can quote anything from a story, it's not just for dialogue, but because it needs to look different when you have it written in a paragraph when you're answering a question, because the quotation marks tell me, the reader, that this wasn't your writing. You're just copying what someone else wrote into your story. That's why you want to put quotation marks around it when you're citing your text evidence from now on, if you have not already done so, which some of you have. And then we also are going into learning target number 2, to make claims in the form of inferences, conclusions, and generalizations drawn from the text. In regular words, that means to make multiple opinions, and there are opinions that can be supported with evidence, using inferences, what the text hints at, conclusions, which are decisions you as the reader make based on your own reasoning and logic from what you've read, and or generalizations, which are broad statements that you've thought of that connect to life beyond the text. When we think of themes, that would be one type of generalization. You also want to make sure, as you are making your claims, you're using the details of the text as the basis for your claims. And again, we say claims, it's just a fancy word for an opinion that can be supported with the text. So other than learning target number 2, we're also looking at what we've talked about before, learning target number 6, to analyze how particular elements of a story interact. And in this case, we are looking at how the setting shapes the characters and the plot. So as you read, know that all the questions in this workbook activity are going to be geared around looking at how the setting shapes the characters of the plot. So you're going to have to make sure that you think about how different parts affect each other in the written work. In this case, how the setting affects the characters. Okay, so I do also want to take a few minutes to go over your reading test with you, and I'm going to do that live and in person. But know that as we work today on today's learning targets, we're going to be in the close reader and answering specific questions about that. So let's talk real quickly about how that close reader is set up. So notice, this is your close reader, and with the close reader, you do have to fill in stuff. And as you click on different parts of it, it will tell you. So here's an example of how to fill in the close reader. It's asking you to think of notes. It also will be asking you, and I'm going to try to zoom in here. It tells you, as you read lines 1 through 77, begin to collect and cite text evidence. Underline details in 1 through 5 that describe the story's setting. So make sure you do that. So I would read 1 through 5 first, then go back and underline the details that describe the story's setting. To underline the details that describe the setting, you just kind of go like that and add a note. And when you add a note, that note will be, this is describing the setting. And you keep going through like that. Please make sure that you do put it into your notebook, as always, but make sure you're following all instructions. Today, you're going to be completing page 1 and page 2, as well as page 3 of the video on this. So you're going to stop when you get to page 3 and answer question 2 here. Question 3 is for tomorrow's reading, so please do not do that one. So you can go ahead and get to work on this. I know this is our first experience with this, so I'm not sure quite how it's going to look, but I will help you and come around briefly and make sure that it's working properly as we do this close reading activity.